Hi everyone! Today we are going to learn how to play French folk song. This is a really popular song that a lot of beginning string players learn. It's actually kind of in the same category as Twinkle Twinkle, where it's one that you just learn. No matter where you are as a string player, you learn this at some point. And the thing that I like the most about this song is that it uses all of the notes in the D major scale. So it gives you a chance to use all of those notes that we've learned so far and continue to get comfortable using them. Before we look at the music, though, there are a couple of new things that you're going to see that I want to show you first before we actually start playing. So, the first thing is to talk about time signature, and we haven't spent really any time on this in lessons yet because everything that we've played has been in the same time signature, and that's this 4/4. So if you look at the beginning of all of the music that we've been playing, you'll see the two fours on top of each other. And what 4/4 means, and this is the simple explanation, there is a little bit more in depth that we'll go over next year, but this basically means that every measure, and remember we break that music down into those chunks, into those measures, has 4 beats in it. Okay, so there's lots of different ways to make 4 beats. If you're using quarter notes, those are 1 beat notes, so you would need 4 quarter notes per measure. Half notes are 2 beat notes, so there would be 2 half notes in every measure. Or a whole note is 4 beats, so you can fit 1 whole note in every measure. So we've been working in that world of 4/4. This piece, French folk song, is in a different time signature, which is 3/4. Okay, so you can probably guess if you're looking at the difference between these two, it's that top number, that 3. So instead of having 4 beats in every measure, we are now going to have 3 beats in every measure. And it doesn't change a lot about how you play things, but it does have a little bit of a different feel to it. So I wanted, and it looks a little different too. So I wanted you to be aware of the fact that the time signature is different. The other thing is that since we only have 3 beats in every measure, we aren't ever going to have a whole note because a whole note is 4 beats. So we're getting rid of the whole note. But I am going to show you a new type of note that we haven't learned yet in lessons. And that is called the dotted half note. Okay. Now, if we took away this dot and just had a regular old half note, we know that that gets 2 beats. Okay. Whenever you see a dot at the end of a note, the dot is a way of saying we're going to add an extra half of whatever this note value was. I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but if we know that a half note is 2 beats, the dot says we're going to add another half of that. So what is half of 2? 1. So we have 2 plus 1, and that equals 3. So this dotted half note is going to get 3 beats. And if we think back to our new time signature here of 3/4, that's kind of going to be the note that fills up a whole measure. So when you have one note in a measure in 3/4, it's going to be that dotted half note. Okay, I hope that makes sense. We'll continue to talk about different time signatures and these different notes, but I need to show you those things before we got to our piece of music. So before we start playing, like I did last time, I'm going to go through and show you each instrument's music. So that way, if you're not a violin, I'll keep the violin music up, but violas, cellos, bass, you can take a screenshot and have this up on your screen. I will also have this slide presentation in the Google Classroom, but if you're not someone who's in the Google Classroom, you can just take a screenshot. So right now, if you're a violinist, you can take a screenshot. This is for violas. If you play viola, go ahead and take a screenshot. And this is for cello and bass. So if you're a cello or bass player, take a screenshot of this. All right, I'm going to go back now to our violin music. And for everybody, so if you're not a violinist, you can go ahead and pull up your music on your screen and just have the video playing in the background. For everybody, you should be able to identify that that very first note is called high D, right? We've worked on playing that before. Everyone should know how to play high D. You can see the way that these measures are broken up, like we talked about with that 3/4 time signature, that we only have 3 quarter notes in every measure, and then sometimes this dotted half note, this 3-beat note. So I'm going to start in the first measure with my high D. And one thing that I like to do before I play is to build up to that note. That's a note that uses a lot of fingers, right? 3 or 4 fingers, depending on who you are. And so I like to build up to make sure I'm playing the note correctly. So for everyone except bass, you're going to play this: A, B, C sharp, D, to make sure you really land on that high D. It will sound like this. Okay, and that's how you know that you're at your high D. Bass, it's going to be a little bit different for you because you start on your G string, right? Because you play that note on your G string. So I would play G, A, B, shift to C sharp, and then D. So yours will sound like this, bass. And that way you know that you're on the right note. So we're going to start on that D, and we see we have 3 Ds and then 3 C sharps. So right now I'm going to play the first 2 measures. Okay, and feel free to play along with me. Most of you should be able to handle this. So we're building up, making sure we have our note. 1, 2, 3. Ready, here we go. Awesome. Hopefully all of you got that with me. That should be pretty straightforward. The next measure has different notes, so let's make sure we know what those are. We play Ds and C sharps. One note lower than that is a B. B, C sharp, D, and then in measure 4, the 4th measure with this dotted half note, that is an A. Okay, for everyone except bass, that's open A. For bass, you have 1 finger to play that note. Okay, and you notice that under that dotted half note, it says slow bow. The reason they're telling you that is because you've been playing quarter notes this whole time and hopefully using nice full bows to get a good tone. When you get to that dotted half note, you do need to slow your bow down a little bit or you're going to run out. Okay, that's something that string players have to know how to do, is how to distribute your bow as you're playing. So let's now play measures 3 and 4. So it's going to be B, C sharp, D, and a long A. Okay, getting my B ready. That's 1 finger for everyone except bass. For bass, it's 4 fingers. Okay, ready, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Let's put all 4 of those measures together. That should be pretty easy for us to put together. Again, this is staying on 1 string. So for violins, viola, cello, you're hanging out on the A string the whole time. Bass, you're hanging out on the G string the whole time. You do have that shift in there. But let's do this one more time. So set your bow down right on that A string. Build up to your first note, the first 4 measures. Ready, here we go. Awesome. We're going to do the next 4 measures all together because hopefully looking at measures 5, 6, 7, and 8, you'll notice that this is actually a little bit easier than you might have initially thought. This is basically a D major scale backwards starting on G, right? This first note is G, either 3 or 4 fingers, or 3 excuse me, let me say that again. 3 fingers for violins and violas, 4 fingers for cello, and then open G for bass. Okay, that's that note that we all play a little bit differently. But it's G, 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 F sharp, F sharp, F sharp, E, 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 and then a long open D. Okay, so putting these 4 measures should be relatively easy for us. We should be able to do this without too much trouble. So right now, go ahead and build up to that G just like we did before. Okay, bass, you don't have quite as hard of a job on this one. That's okay. Finding our G, starting at measure 5. I'm playing measures 5, 6, 7, and 8. Ready, here we go. Awesome. Let's play from the beginning to there. So measures 1 through 8. Okay, always making sure that we're using our fingertips to play those notes and that we're really in the right spot. If something sounds wrong, stop and fix your hand. You don't want to keep playing with the wrong hand position. So find your high D. We're starting at the beginning. 1, 2, 3. Ready, here we go. One, two, three. Awesome. Let's take a look at the next 4 measures now. The nice thing, if you start at measure 9, by the way, I don't think I said this, but those big boxes with the numbers, those are the measure numbers. So when I say a measure number, it's either one that has a box with a number in it or you count from there. So, for example, here's measure 5. The next one would be measure 6, and then 7 and 8. Okay? I should have said that up front. Sorry about that. So if you look at measures 9, 10, and 11, they're all exactly the same. 9, 10, and 11 are the same, and those notes are D, E, F sharp. Let's play that once, and then we'll practice doing it 3 times in a row. Okay? D, E, F sharp. Ready? Here we go. So it should feel like the beginning of a scale, right? Now let's do it 2 times. Ready? Here we go. Okay, now let's do it 3 times in a row. That's what this is actually asking us to do, 3 times in a row. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. And then if you look at the next measure, it's a G, a nice long G. 2, 3. Okay, so let me play measures 9 through 12 all together now. Ready? Here we go. Awesome. Let's take a look at the next group of 4, measures 13, 14, 15, and 16. You'll notice that it kind of looks like we took the last group of measures and just bumped them up one note, and that actually is what happened. This is what we call in music a sequence. It means you take a little musical phrase or a section of music, and you just kind of bump it up or bump it down one note for each pitch. So instead of playing D, E, F sharp, we're playing E, F sharp, G, E, F sharp, G. Okay, so it's going to feel similar, but of course different fingering. Let's practice that E, F sharp, G. Make sure we have that down. Find your E. That's one finger for everybody. It's the one note that one of the only notes that we all play the same. Okay, ready? Here we go. Awesome. Okay, now let's do the 3 measures of E, F, G, and then a nice A. Okay, here's 13. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Let's start at measure 9 again. I want to practice that sequence, how it's this, and then you just bump it up a little bit. Okay, so it should sound very similar. We're going to play measure 9 all the way down to measure 16. So here we're starting at 9. We're getting ourselves ready on the D string. Ready, here we go. 1, 2. Now the E. Awesome. And the last 4 measures. I know these probably look like the scariest measures of the whole thing, but I promise it's not as hard as you're thinking. If we kind of look at the pattern of the notes, and we start on high D. Everyone should recognize that note high D at the beginning of measure 17. If we practice going, not practice, I'm sorry. If we look at the notes and the direction that they're going and the fact that they aren't skipping, it's just one note after another, you might recognize this as a backwards D major scale. D, C sharp, B, A, G, F sharp, E, D. That's a backwards D major scale. And then it ends with E, D. So you go back up and back down. Okay. Let me play that for you slowly so you can hear what it sounds like. And this might be a spot where you have to pause the video and kind of play through it a couple of times. But let me play from 17 to the end so that you can hear it. Sounds like this. Okay. One thing I wanted to point out is that, at least in the violin part, it says 4 fingers over that A. That's something we haven't learned how to do yet, so you can ignore that and just play your open A string. So if you feel like you might need a minute to practice that, from 17 to the end, go ahead and pause and run through that. It's notes that you know, it's a pattern that you know, it's just getting your fingers warmed up and able to do that, right? And that's one of the things that we've been working on in these lessons is being able to have a little bit more dexterity in your left hand so you can play things faster, right? And more accurately as well. So let's do this. We've gone through every section in groups of 4, sometimes even in groups of 8 measures. Let's try to play through the whole thing. If you're not ready for that yet, again, you can pause and practice through as much as you need, but I'm going to play through the whole thing right now. Building up to my D, making sure I'm in the right spot, setting my bow down on the A string, or G if you're a bass. 1, 2, 3, ready, here we go. 'Kay, so that's all the way through French folk song. I hope you enjoyed this piece and that you were able to get through most of it. You can spend some of this week practicing through this, really perfecting it. And then I would love to see a video of this that you can submit on the Google Classroom so I can see how you're doing with it.